Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J live from the Den, Legacy Internet Radio. Appreciate everybody that's been rocking with us tonight. We appreciate those folks that have been listening to us all over the country and all over the world. Appreciate those folks that are listening to us on YouTube and on iTunes on our replays, as well as those folks that are checking us out on Streamer, on TuneIn, as well as on Stream License. And y'all rock with us. We are rolling with y'all. As you guys remember hearing throughout the show, been letting you guys know that we've got a special guest on the show. Of course, he's my brother. He's my partner. He's my friend. He's my big brother. I call him that all the time. He is the #1 true fighter in America. My brother, Mr. Warren Ballentine, rejoins Ain't No Half Step on Marcus J. What's up, Warren?
Brother, always good to be with you, man. You know, it's always good to come and feel like you're at home, and it's always good to talk to your brother. So always good to be with you.
Well, it's always good to have you on, and I appreciate all the work that you do. You're a fearless brother, and I look up to you, and I appreciate the opportunities that we get to build. And, you know, I know you about to drop some jewels on the Ain't No Half Step on Marcus J family and the Legacy Internet Radio family. So we not going to waste no time on the salutations. We talking now. We going to get past all that and start talking about the stuff. Look, man, the Attorney General of the United States of America, he said some stuff last week that he wants the United States attorneys to start doing going forward. And I want you to kind of share with the listeners what that was, and you and I are going to talk about it. What did Jeff Sessions say last week?
Well, basically what he came out and said was this. He said, I want to make it where my prosecutors are not handcuffed anymore, so I'm going to erase everything Obama did. I want mandatory minimums, and I want them to prosecute people to the fullest extent. Now, what's scary about that is this. If you put mandatory minimums back in place the way they were prior to Obama, and it rolls down to the government on the state level, from the federal side to the state side, which it will. This is how Jim Crow started. It started in one state, and then it rolled to the next. It's the same reason why the LGBT community can marry in multiple states now, and why weed is getting legalized in multiple states, because once one state does it, everybody kind of falls in line and follows suit. And if you put the mandatory minimums back in place, every day across this country, people are overcharged. I mean, the example that I gave on my show is that you can get pulled over for a simple DUI. You know, give a little lip to the cop. Next thing you know, you're charged with resisting arrest. And then if the cop is you know, a little dirty or a little crazy, he says not only did you resist arrest, but you also assaulted him. Now you got an assault, a DUI, and a resisting arrest. Well, it's according to how the prosecutor prosecutes this. The resisting arrest may fall off. You get charged with the assault, but it may be charged on a felony level. Well, if it's a felony assault on the cop, that's a minimum mandatory of 1 to 3 years in prison, even if you don't have a record. So the people who are going to suffer from this the most, you know, the scary thing about this in society right now, this isn't just a black thing anymore. It used to be about us, but now this is a class thing, because if you look at the numbers over the last 5 years, if you look at the data for criminal prosecution in this country, the number that's the highest number is the amount of money made by people who are found guilty or take plea deals in this country. The average median for those people are $40,000 or less. So when you break it down by that, what you see is that this isn't just affecting black people at a high number. It's affecting whites. It's affecting Latinos. It's affecting everybody who's in that category of $40,000 or less. So this is so much big business. See, we don't think about the legal system as big business,
right,
but it's huge business, because even on a routine DUI stop, not even a drug case or a murder case or anything like that, just a routine DUI stop, which if you've never had a DUI, what happens is if you get pulled over, you blow or you fail the sobriety test, you get taken in, they keep you in for 24 hours, then you're released on your own recognizances, and basically you just come in and you don't go back to jail or nothing like that. You got to complete some courses. You got to, get some drug assessments and alcohol assessments done. But basically it's a slap on the hand for the first time DUI. The only part about it that's hard is that your license is suspended. But just off of something like that, if you break down who all eats off of that arrest, you have the dispatcher, whoever the dispatcher who dispatches out to the police, or the police sending it back to the dispatcher. You got the police officer. You got the car that the police is driving in. You got the tire manufacturer, the brake manufacturer, everything that's made in the car. They all are making money off of that car and that police pulling somebody over. Then once they get arrested and go to jail, well, you got the people who make the toilet tissue, the people who make the bedding, the people who give the food. They're all eating. Then they go in the courtroom. The judge, the stenographer, the sheriff, the attorneys, prosecutor, and defendant. So if you end up going to jail after that, now you got a whole nother. You got the sheriff's office or the COs. If you got to go into corrections, then you got a probation officer that's going to get paid. So realistically, off a routine DUI, where if you're charged with resisting and criminal assault to a cop, and you get a mandatory minimum, you may have 30 different industries or more making money off of that particular arrest and that 1 year incarceration of somebody. This is what's going on every day, and Jeff Sessions is in bed with these companies and with the industrial prison system, which is a private system, and it's making big money. They're selling it on the stock exchange, and this is why we need to be, literally everybody need to be calling their congressmen, their senators, and saying, look, do not let Jeff Sessions change this. Now, a lot of us think, well, it's nothing we can do about it because the Republicans control everything. But this is a humanitarian thing. It's not a black thing. It's not a Democratic thing. It's not a Republican thing, because poor whites, poor blacks, and poor Latinos are going to be the ones who are hardly hit, hardly affected. Right now, our prisons, we have about 2.2 million people in prison. If they do this and it rolls through the country because of Donald Trump being president, I guarantee you that number is going to go from 2.2 million to about 3.8 million over the next 4 years, and it's going to be the majority of poor people who are going to be sitting in them jail cells.
You're listening to Ain't No Half Step on Marcus J, live from the den of Legacy Internet Radio. We're talking to our brother, the number one true fighter, Warren Ballentine. Warren, you got a lot of people who are used to playing the race card, and they'll ask you, what's the deal with the educational system and how that plays in when you're looking at low-income areas, which are particularly areas in the hood, black kids, black folk, Latinos, things of that sort, and talk about how the kids are being tested to determine how many of those private prisons are going to be necessary. You ask, well, how does that play into what Warren just, talked about, and how that plays into what Jeff Sessions just played into? But my question to you is, if the private prisons are there and 20 years from now, they're filling them up based upon the test that they're taking today, and Jeff Sessions is saying today, we need you to be more tough on how you go about bringing these people into the courts and into the jail systems. Connect how those dots all go together.
Well, it's very simple. I mean, this country is a capitalistic country, and by definition, you got to have poor people, working middle class, and the 1%. That's what capitalism is. When you look at the educational system, it's the same thing. It's underperforming kids, it's average kids, and then the kids who take the honor classes. So these kids are being pre-designated before they even start their life. And what's sad about it is that most parents don't even realize that their kids are being pre-designated. So if you have a school that has 1,000 kids in it, if you got 500 kids in this area of academia who are in the underperforming, and then you got another 250 that's in average and 250 in honor, well, what they do is they look at their school and they say, okay, we got 500 in underperforming, 250 in average. Out of that 250, 100 of that 250 is going to fall down to below average as they get through their lives, because they're going to make mistakes and do other things. So they estimate these 600 kids being potential candidates for prison. And then what they do is they hit every school in that school district up. Let's say if it's 30 schools in that district, if they average 600 kids for those 30 schools, and they can say, hey, 600 times 30, we know we looking at potentially 180,000 people that may run through this jail prison. Let's build a jail over here. And this is how they can guarantee that the jail is going to be filled as they're selling them. Every state is selling their jails to private entities, and they're guaranteeing for the next 20 years that they'll be at 90% capacity. And that's because they're doing it through the educational system. Now, in the South, I had a caller on my show and talked to me about something that was happening to a 7-year-old kid in the North Carolina school system. This kid had a behavioral problem. The parents admittedly said the kid had a behavioral problem, right? Well, what the school did was they tried to get him in an alternative school. Couldn't get him in because the alternative school only holds 66 kids. The school was full. So he had to go back to his neighborhood school. So what the school decided to do amongst itself was basically they put the kid in a room by himself, isolated away from all the other kids in school. 7 years old. This is the kid's age. They took turns watching the kid. They had some teachers, they had some lunch attendants, and they had some security. The kid had 2 breaks. One, he could go into the lunchroom at lunch, pick out his lunch, but had to come back and eat his lunch alone. Second break was he could go to the bathroom if security took him. Now, he had an honors program where if he got a certain amount of pluses, by the end of the week, he would get to go have lunch for 1 hour with the rest of his classmates in school. This sounds like solitary to me. It's teaching this kid that him being alone and incarcerated is okay.
Yeah.
And this is happening all across the country. And this is why it's so important, if you have a child, that you be vigilant about what's going on at their school. If you have a child, you be vigilant about what the policies are. And if your child is designated as underperforming, get him or her out that school, because if you don't, what happens is once they get to 3rd grade and they get that designation, that's their designation through school from that point on. So even if your kid starts to become better as they get older, because they've been designated as underachievers, their academic challenge is not going to be like the kids in honor classes. So they're going to be taking the basic necessities just to get by, where the honor kids are going to be taking physics and biology and chemistry and college algebra and trigonometry, challenging their thought process, where your kid will be taking basic, arithmetic. So you want to make sure that you understand what's going on, because if you don't understand what's going on, they are setting this up for your kid to be pre-designated to go into this prison system, in the next 15 to 20 years.
And they doing it to you in front of your face. They ain't trying to hide it from you. They're letting you know. They're giving you papers to sign that say that you okay with them doing it to your child, and you saying, yeah, it's cool, and you don't even realize what you're signing up for.
That's exactly right. And see, you got to remember that 99% of these teachers who are telling you your child has got a behavioral problem or ADHD or this is the best solution for your child, these people aren't trained in that field. That's a whole different field than teaching. So they're not trained in behavioral sciences. They're not trained in psychological therapy. And they're telling you things that somebody who should be trained in that is telling you to do. They're just teachers. So you have to be vigilant enough to say, hey, while I appreciate that you think this, I need to get somebody with a second opinion, somebody who has, the appropriate degree to be able to justify this and figure out what's going on, because if you don't, your kid get caught up in it and you don't even know how they get caught up in it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sad cycle. And, I say a lot on #hashtag with Marcus J and other shows here on Legacy Internet Radio that, we can walk around and worry about the white man this, the white man that. They are, in fact, the default in this country. Everything kind of stems off of them, whether that's right or whether that's wrong. But we are in control of what we do for us. And we have a lot of the things that we have because we allow it to happen. We can make a lot of changes. All we got to do is act right. And one of the things that we need to do is show up in the schools and show up and make sure that we protect our children. When I look around, particularly here in the Richmond, Virginia area, Warren, I see certain parts of town where the parents show up in the school board meetings and things of that sort. But if you go to other parts of town, they're not quite as interested. Well, guess what? The part of town where the parents show up is the part of town that gets the money, and the part of town that the parents don't show up is the part of town that gets taken advantage of. And take a guess who that is.
Well, and it's not just about showing up. It's about, we have to change the perception and the thought process of other people and how they view us and how we even view each other.
Right.
We view each other like they view us. And we view each other like that because we see all this hatred and killing and violence in our community, and so we think that's all we are. We start believing that's what we are. I mean, in the Richmond area right now, you guys are having an epidemic with people shooting people in cars. And it's just like, what the hell is going on that every other day somebody getting shot on the expressway up there on 85? I mean, I'm like, what's going on with this?
Right.
Because it's no need for this to be happening.
None.
And that's the thing that we need to change. We got control over certain situations. There's some things we don't control. But the things we do control, we need to be more vigilant and more thoughtful in how we can make sure the perception becomes the reality and not what they see on TV, because all they're going to show is the worst. They're not going to show the best. They're not going to show the kids that's graduating from college, the kids that's graduating from high school, that got full scholarships to college. They're not going to highlight them. They're going to highlight the kids that's shooting.
I'm
They're
glad you
doing
said
drugs,
that.
they're doing everything else, because they want you to think a certain way. They want you to believe a certain thing about humanity and about who we are as a people.
I'm glad
this is why our radio stations play what they play.
Right.
Our TV shows are I love Empire, but it's the biggest stereotypical thing in the world about black people.
I'm glad you said that, Warren. I'm glad you said it that way because, you know, the truth of the matter is I've taken a lot of heat from friends and family about speaking the way I speak. I mean, the reality is we are the ones that are in control. If we called up the radio station and said we don't want to hear Panda, then we're not going to hear Panda. you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it's pretty clear. It's pretty simple. I know your time is limited, so I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. Ain't no hashtag with Marcus J. Live from the Den Legacy Internet Radio. You're listening to the flagship show of Legacy Internet Radio with our brother and our friend, Brother Warren Ballentine, the #1 true fighter in America. We're talking about a variety of things. All right, now I'm gonna have a little fun right now, Warren, and I'm gonna need you to not judge me. All right, you can promise not to judge me. Don't judge me, right?
Hey, brother, I ain't gonna never judge you. You know that.
All right, brother, don't judge me. All right, here's the deal, right? Our sister texted me yesterday and said, Miss USA is on, and I'm going to need you to turn it on. So my initial reaction is, I don't want to watch that. But because if you know me, you know that I'm a Bob Marley fan, and you know once you say Marley, you got my attention. Stephen Marley was on last night. I was like, all right, word. I might have to turn that on, check that out. But then I realized that 5 of the top 10 Miss USA contestants were sisters. I was like, all right, so now you got my attention another kind of way. Miss DC, we're going to talk about her for a minute in our limited time that we have left. Miss DC was asked a question about health care, and she was asked whether health care was a right or a privilege. Now, for me, it was no longer about Miss USA because I didn't want to watch it anyway. It was more about that question. The question was, healthcare, is it a right or is it a privilege? Which is what I put out in my social media, and that's what I'm going to put out to you, the #1 true fighter, Warren Ballentine. Healthcare, is it a right or is it a privilege?
It is definitely a right, and it would be my privilege to sweat some good sense into Miss DC, because that's what she needs. She need a brother to make her sweat so she can get some good sense in her, because this girl done lost her mind talking about it's a damn privilege. It's not a privilege for somebody to want life. It's a right. It's a right. This is why even if you take a baby, if you take a brand new baby and you put that baby in a position where that baby's life is in peril, the baby fights for his life, because it's the human instinct to want to survive. That's a right. That's not a privilege. That's not a privilege at all. None whatsoever. But for her to sit up here and say this is the problem, right? One of the biggest problems that we have in the black community is that, unlike our Jewish brothers and sisters, we justify what happened to us. We justify what they did to us. We justify what they're doing to us today. We're the only people that justify what happens to us. And instead of justification, what we need to be saying is, hey, you did this, and it was wrong.
Right.
Now, all of you didn't do it. I tell people all the time, when I talk about slavery, I say, hey, only 8% of the country was slave owners. Everybody else came here as either indentured servants or slaves.
Right.
That 8% was the rich, and everybody else was the poor. I said, but what they brilliantly did was they realized at a very early stage that if we could separate the poor whites from the poor blacks and give them a reason to fight, it would keep us sustained in power. And that's what they did. And so we have to be like other ethnic groups and say, you did this. And even if you were not one of the 8%, you still benefited through a de facto manner because you were able to get educated. You were able to get married. You were able to be able to do that. And then if you want to argue, well, that was so long ago, 400 years ago, 200 years ago, well, let's just go to the civil rights era. We ain't even got to go that far back. Because with the civil rights era, I tell people all the time, civil rights in its nature was pure at heart. It was a beautiful thing. I admire it. I appreciate it. But it wasn't civil rights that we got. We got consumerism. We got consumer rights. We got the right to spend our money with them. And once we got that right, we gave up all that we owned. We owned hospitals and banks and educational institutions and everything else, and we gave all that away because we wanted the right to spend our money with them. And that's the part of this that nobody talks about because the two greatest movements, and the civil rights movement, were all based off of money. Yeah. Lincoln never wanted to free the slaves. He had to cripple the South. The only way he could cripple them was make the slaves free, get rid of that free labor. That would cripple them economically. That's how the North won the Civil War. When you look at the civil rights movement, even after Dr. King was murdered, assassinated in Memphis, he was there for the sanitation workers. They didn't get what they wanted until the white business owners came in and said, we're losing $1 million a day. Let these Negroes come and give them whatever they want.
And I'm glad you made that point, Warren, because it was done.
It was about money.
It was done. I'm glad you mentioned that Martin Luther King was murdered because he was murdered by the United States government, who apologized to the King family for doing it.
No, they sued them and they won. The King family actually won a settlement from the United States government. And most people don't know that. They won a settlement he was murdered.
Every chance I get, Warren, I make that point. Every chance I get, because I'm sick and tired of hearing, liberal white folks who say, and tired black folks that tell me that I'm too militant, and people kept telling me that I'm race baiting. I get sick and tired of having those conversations with people. I had to remind them to go and do their own damn research so they can see this.
My response when everybody tell me, you talking from a race bait position? No, I'm not, because when I talk from a position of humanitarianism. But the reality of it is that this is the facts. If this happened and it's factual, it's not about race baiting. It's about telling the truth.
Right.
It's just like the Jewish community. Look, when they talk about the Holocaust and everything else, they put that guilt on everybody, not just the Germans. They put it on everybody, to the point where even to this day, we send Israel every year at the beginning of the year $10 billion. And they don't even have to tell us what they're doing with the money. Yep. They can go wipe their butts with the money, and we don't say nothing about it.
Yep.
Nothing.
Yep. I'm glad you said that, because I've been telling my listeners that. And, every once in a while I get people who ask me, where you get that from? I'm telling you, you can look this up, man. This is not anything that they even hide from you. This is the thing, Warren. A lot of these things are right in front of us. You can find these things. You can look them up. We got this great thing called the internet. We got this great thing called a library, but we spend so much time watching things that don't matter. Like we want to be worldly. We want to be wise, and we want to be knowledgeable. But then when we have the resources to do these things, we don't actually utilize them. It drives me nuts, man. Now I know our time is limited and we're going to run out of time. So I want to take this last little bit of time that we have with you. We have this outstanding initiative that we're going to be doing, that you and I are partnering with. Two things, actually. The podcast that's going to be happening, that you're going to be doing, that we're going to be doing with the True Fighters, and also what we're doing with the historically black colleges and universities, the HBCUs. And so kind of combine those two things together and tell us what we're doing with those two projects.
Well, with the podcast, I want everybody to go to the website, thewbshow.com, sign up for the podcast. I'm going to give Marcus an opportunity, because my thing is this, I have a motto that I try to live by: push me and I'll pull you. That way, if you pushing me up the mountain, I'm pulling you up to the mountain. Once I get to the top, you're not looking up at me, I'm not looking down on you. We side by side. So I'm a real proponent in that. And how can I help my brother get what he's trying to achieve? So I'm going to be doing these podcasts, and I said, look, I want to help people in the audience who want to get in and do things. And I said, I want to help other people who are doing this already, who have a following. And I said, the first person I could think of is my brother, Marcus J. Want you to come on, do at least a once-a-month podcast on the site, and let you just do you. Let you go for what you know. And so we're going to have that going. The second thing that we're doing together is the HBCU documentary. And what we're doing is we're looking for people who have lineage at HBCUs, where they got either 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of family members who went to HBCUs, whether it's the same school or different schools. And we're going to pick 10 schools, and we're going to pick 10 families from these 10 schools, and we're going to follow the families. We're going to come, we're going to interview you. Why did you go to the HBCU? Follow you for homecoming at the HBCU. And the purpose of this is threefold. One, we want to show all the white universities that the HBCUs got the same thing. It's the same football tradition. It's the same homecoming tradition. It's the same educational opportunity, and it's the same lineage as far as people going to these schools, not because it's the only school they could go to, it's because it's the school they chose to go to. The second reason we're doing this, change the perception of black people. We're not just all rappers and ball players and entertainers. Let's show them some dentists and some lawyers and some teachers and some engineers and some social workers and other people who are doing it the right way, but they're not never highlighted. So let's highlight the best that we got, the cream of the cream, and show them that we are not what you're seeing on BET or what you're seeing in the nightly news at the beginning of the news program every night. The third reason to do this is because we have a president that wants to defund the federal side of HBCUs. And if he defunds it, what happens is this. Now it becomes the state. It becomes the state's responsibility to fund these HBCUs. In most states where there are historically black colleges, the colleges are already tied in. If they're public schools, they're tied into the school system under, if it's Virginia, under the Virginia Commonwealth school system. If you're North Carolina, it's the North Carolina school system. And so you're quasi under the umbrella of whatever the University of Virginia, or Virginia Tech, or North Carolina State. But if it's up to the government fully, the state fully to fund this and no federal help, the state is going to say, we don't have the money to fund them. And when they say they don't have the money to fund them, then they're going to say, well, look, we're going to put you completely under the umbrella of University of North Carolina. So a school like North Carolina A&T that has one of the best engineering programs in all of America will now be University of North Carolina, Greensboro East, and then University of North Carolina, Greensboro, that's there now, will be West. And so it will lose what the school's history is and what the tradition is. And so we're doing this to show the alumni and even people who didn't attend HBCUs why it's necessary and important. And the biggest thing I want to do with this, we've been talking to celebrities. This past weekend, I got 3 Jewish friends that I went to undergrad with, and one of them is a filmmaker, and I was telling him about this. I said, this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm going to do. He's like, man, let me do a production company for you. Let's get on distribution. I mean, he started talking about stuff that I didn't even think about, because I was just like, we'll shoot the documentary and then just sell the documentary. And he's like, no, Warren. He's like, we're going to enter this in Sundance and all. This is a $30 million deal kind of thing. So he was like, you got something here that, quite frankly, could be award-winning, because it's a side of black America that's never shown. And he said, I guarantee you, when people see this, they're going to want to give to these universities. They're going to want to help these universities. So my hope is that we can show this, highlight this, and tell stories of family history, of tradition, and also show examples of how many of these kids come into these HBCUs who may not have been able to qualify for these bigger schools, the one person I think about, I'm friends with his son, say cool, Willie Gary. Willie Gary went to Shaw University, became one of the biggest lawyers in America, worth billions of dollars. Shaw University was the only school that would accept him. He didn't even qualify for Shaw, but they let him in. The first year he was there, he wasn't even taking college classes. And that first year he took classes to prepare him for his first year of college. And then it got him into that first year after into that second year, which was his first year. And he went through to graduate with honors, then go to North Carolina Central for law school. And now, he's hiring people from Harvard. So it's so important because these schools give us chances that other people will not take on us. And even though we may not qualify when we come out because we come from an underperforming school or we've been categorized as underperforming kids and been tagged all through elementary, junior high, and high school, when we get up to these HBCUs, you got folks up there who are educated and care enough to say, hey, we're going to help you get college ready. And then after we get you college ready, we're going to put you in the college classes up here and make sure you graduate. You're not going to be just a number. You're going to actually be somebody that we care about. And see, I've been blessed that I went to HBCU. I've been to the white schools. In the white schools, I was a number. That's what I was. We go into class. It's 500 people in the study hall. My professor don't even know my name, but the TAs know me. It's just I was a good student, so it didn't matter. But if you're not a good student, you need that small setting of an HBCU where your professors actually know you and you get access to them so that they can see that you're trying, so they can help you get where you need to go. So my hope is to be able to highlight that, show all the great alumni, the tradition, the family, all the love that we have for each other. Like I tell people all the time, you've never been to an HBCU homecoming, you ain't even got to know nobody. Just step on campus at homecoming, you family. Everybody going to take care of you.
You ain't got to
eat, drink, party, everything else, and not worry about none of the nonsense.
You ain't got to tell me, Warren, because I'm a product of Virginia Union University right here in the capital city of Richmond, Virginia. And, you and I talked. I'm going to put you on the spot at some point. I got to get you up here.
I'm coming for homecoming, V. I'm coming. You ain't even got to tell me twice. I'm there.
You got to come. Ain't no hashtag with Marcus J. Live from Den, Legacy Internet Radio. We're talking to the #1 true fighter in America, our brother and friend of the station, Legacy Internet Radio, our brother Warren Ballentine. Warren, I appreciate you, man. Before we close, I need you to tell all of the Legacy Internet Radio listeners who you are and how they can find you, brother.
Man, brother, you know what? I'm just a brother out here who love my people. And when I say my people, I ain't talking about black people. I'm talking about anybody who wants to make it better for everybody. Look, if you want to make it better for everybody, I'm a fan of yours. And I will do anything I can to help you because I'm a true believer in I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. So that's me. And so you can find me. I'm on Twitter at TruthFighter1. I'm on Instagram at TruthFighter. And then you can go to the website, thewbshow.com. If you go on there, you can see my show. We stream it live. So the video is up there and everything else. And, I tell people all the time, I call myself the ugliest man in radio because I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not. Sometimes it's going to be ugly. So that's me in a nutshell.
I can dig it, brother. Ain't no hashtag on Marcus J. Live from the Den, Legacy Internet Radio. We're going to take a break. We come back. We have more of the show. Warren, hold the line. You're listening to the flagship show, Legacy Internet Radio. You rock with me. You rock with us. We going to roll with you. Ain't no hashtag with Marcus J. Be back in a few, y'all. Stay with us.
You're chilling with David Wren, a.k.a. Dave from L.A., with my man Marcus J. of Ain't No Half Steppin' at Legacy Internet Radio.